ballpark somewhere between maybe 70 to 100 measurement, and 110 in the bloodstream, or some will use 80 to 120. So you get a blood test, or if you know anybody's a diabetic and they're checking their blood glucose levels, they want maybe 70 to 110 or 80 to 120. Well, if you're not eating, it's going to fall below that level, and so you'll end up converting things into glucose, because the brain cells can burn a lot of things, but they love to burn glucose. Our brain cells, nerve cells prefer glucose, and if the glucose levels drop too much, it begins to affect the functioning of the brain cells, and so we have gluconeogenesis. We're creating new glucose from either carbs or fats. We're synthesizing it. So that's all I wanted to say about glucose at this point. On that review sheet, back to that just for a moment, if you have it available. Number 30 wants to know, give me the simple definition of gluconeogenesis. Gluconeogenesis, you can think of it either as, yeah, come on in, Josh. Wherever you want to sit, you can sit over here if you want, wherever you're comfortable. No problem. You can think of it as either synthesizing or creating glucose from fats or proteins, however you want to word it. Making glucose from fats or proteins, or synthesizing glucose from fats or proteins. Gluconeogenesis. Even question 32 on that sheet, you'll see what's metabolism. I mentioned that on the first page. It's the sum of all the chemical reactions in the body. So I've answered a bunch of them. I got a couple more to answer, but trying to go through them. There's not a lot of questions on the first test dealing with metabolism. It's not a biochemistry class. I'm trying to keep it light. So that's what's going on with glucose. What do we like to do with glucose? It's over here. We like to burn glucose for energy. Well, now we get the lipids. Lipids are kind of the middle ground guy over here. Lipids can be used for energy over on this side, but we can also build things with them. We can also store them temporarily on the body, or hopefully temporarily on the body. So now I mentioned, what's the fate of a lipid? Well, we can break lipids down, and we can make glucose. Not glucose, can make energy. You can get a lot of ATP out of a fat molecule. We'll discuss that. So you can chemically break them down. The second one is that some of them are stored as adipose. We think of adipose, which you may remember from Anatomy 1, Chapter 4, that famous chapter on tissues, loose connective tissue right after areola. It was adipose tissue, fat. We have fat on the body. There's different types. There's white fat, there's brown fat, but we have fat on the body. Fat does serve a function. Fat serves as a shock absorber, so we find it around certain organs, protecting the organs. Fat is an insulator. It does insulate the body. You've never seen a skinny polar bear. You don't see a skinny, big fat polar bear. He's got a lot of fat on him to insulate him. And then we can also use it as an energy reserve. When we need energy later on, we can burn the fat to get the energy so we can make ATP. So we have these different functions. It does have a fat on, it does have a purpose, adipose tissue. The third thing we can do with fats is that we can use them structurally. Things in the body are made with fats. Every cell of our body has a phospholipid bilayer around the outside of it. That's a fat. The brain is 60% fat. It's just covered in fat. The nerves of our body, about 99% of the nerves in our body are covered with fat on the outside, something called myelin. It's all insulated on the outside of it, so we can use it for that. There's something called thromboplastin. Thromboplastin is a fat-based chemical in our body that's involved with blood clotting. So we do need fats. If you ate a zero-fat diet, you had no fat in your diet at all, you'd probably die prematurely. You gotta have fats in the diet. You gotta have some cholesterol and such. I was reading an article the other day by a cardiologist, but one of the more modern cardiologists, and the people that are in the cutting edge stuff. And he was just talking about. He goes, "So what do you have for breakfast?" And I'm listening to him, and he's going that. He goes, "Well, this morning I had my normal breakfast. I had 6 eggs for breakfast today." And he was just saying, eggs got vilified for so long. He goes, pasture-raised organic eggs are probably the best possible whole food that you can get. And he goes, "Don't worry about the yolks." He goes, "The cholesterol in there won't affect your cholesterol levels at all." I've gone through everything from where eggs were good to where eggs were bad to buy these egg beater stuff and the other, just eat egg whites. And the egg whites are that's the one part of the egg that has no nutrition really in it. The white of the egg, that albumin we don't absorb very, very well. But anyhow, it's kind of interesting. So fats are important. We do need it. I want to talk about fats from the point of view of burning fats for energy. So, all right, let's say we digested fats, small intestine, we talked about it. We took fat, hit it with bile, we hit it with pancreatic lipase, and we ended up getting 2 fatty acids and a monoglyceride. Sounds slightly Okay, sounds a little familiar, okay, I'm looking around. Anyhow, they just give me that guy in the back of the car with the head that bobs around like that. And then we had to absorb it. When we absorbed it, it was kind of weird. We surrounded it with bile salts, we put it back into the cells, they absorbed the cells. We made a triglyceride again, we wrapped it in a protein coat, we called it a chylomicron, and that got absorbed into the lacteals, the lymphatic system. Remember, alpha-lacteal, alpha-lymphatic, alpha-lipids. The lipids go into the lymphatic system. Well, the lymph eventually gets back into the blood, and then it goes to the cell, and now that triglyceride that's wrapped in the protein gets into the cell. When it gets into the cell, it immediately breaks apart now into 3 fatty acids, not 2, 3 fatty acids, and a glycerol molecule. It breaks apart differently. So we take that triglyceride, we get, what's the name? Triglyceride. There's 3 or something. We get 3 fatty acids and a glycerol, and this is what happens to it. Take the triglyceride inside the cell, gets broken into a glycerol molecule and 3 separate fatty acids over here. Well, the glycerol molecule can get converted into something called glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate. It's part of glycolysis. Here's glycolysis, 1 glucose, 2 pyruvic acids. We put it in the middle. So that glycerol out of the fatty acid, we treat like glucose. And what did we get out of glucose? About 36 to 38 ATPs. So out of a glycerol molecule, you're going to get 36 to 38 ATPs. Same as a glucose. However, we still have 3 fatty acids left that we can use. And so there's 3 of these fatty acids. Now, they're not going to do this. They're going to get converted by a process called beta oxidation into acetyl coenzyme A molecules. Well, what's a fatty acid? A fatty acid is a big, long chain of carbon molecules. It's a big, long chain. So we have 3 of them. You can have them, they can be 14 carbons long, 16 carbons long, 18 carbon long. Those are the long chain fatty acids. The short chain will be about 10 carbons long or so. But we have these. When we go through beta oxidation, remember glycolysis? What was the definition of glycolysis? 1 pyruvic acid becomes what? 2. I mean, well, 1 glucose becomes 2 pyruvic acids, and so we get then 2 acetyl-CoAs ultimately. When we go through beta oxidation, what beta oxidation does is it cleaves off pairs of these. Acetyl-CoA, 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 acetyl-CoA. You just made a ton. You didn't make 2 acetyl-CoAs. You just made 9 right here. And each one's going to produce about 17 ATPs. And that's just 1. We have 3 fatty acids. You do the math. I'm not doing the math. It's not a math class. I got 36 to 38 ATPs out of the glycerol, right, the triglyceride, but I get there. And now I've taken 1 fatty acid and broken it down into 9 acetyl-CoAs, each one giving me 16 to 17 ATPs. You do the math. There's a lot of ATP. And that's only 1 fatty acid. I got 3 of them. When you burn a fat, you can get hundreds, 400 plus ATPs out of a fat. It's a great, great source of energy, fat. And so we can use it for energy. As I said, glucose is over here, energy. That's all we like to do with it. Fats are in the middle. I can do it over here. I can store it as fat on the body, or I can build things with it. And so I mentioned on the sheets about glycerol becoming, it's going to be converted into glucose. I mentioned the fatty acids going through beta oxidation, getting a lot of ATP. Fats are a great source of energy. I know in the military, I got a couple of folks in the military, but in the military years ago, they used to have these things, MREs. Meals ready to eat, which weren't always so palatable, but they changed them a little bit. They used to be quite heavy in fats in those to, tide you over. It's not like fantasy books you read where there's a battle going on and everybody says, oh, let's see, it's 12 o'clock, we'll put the battle on hold, get out some frying pans and let's have lunch. Nobody stops. You keep going through that. You need a lot of energy, and what you eat is in the form of fats, and then we have the energy available to us. So fat is important, but there's something of interest here. When we burn a fat, because my mind would be, well, gee, if I can get 400 ATPs out of a fat, why does my body burn carbs? I mean, I would burn a little bit of fat, I get a lot more energy out of it, I wouldn't have to eat as much. There's a drawback, it's this guy right here, this beta oxidation. When fatty acids go through beta oxidation, they produce metabolic byproducts that we have to deal with. And the metabolic byproducts are over here. We produce acetoacetic acid, beta-hydroxybutyric acid, and we produce acetone. I don't know if anybody remembers from Anatomy 1 what the normal pH of blood is. Anybody remember? 7.35 to 7.45, very good, yeah. 7.35 to 7.45, normal blood pH. That's the normal pH of blood. You start burning a lot of fats, you're producing two of these, you'll see, acetoacetic acid, beta-hydroxybutyric acid. You're producing acids. Now, acetoacetic acid is basically, many of you know acidic acid, you put it on your salad with some olive oil sometimes at night. Yeah, some vinegar, yeah, it's vinegar, regular vinegar is acidic acid. So we're putting acid into our blood. What happens is when you burn a lot of fats constantly, and you're doing it all the time, you're gonna start to reduce the pH in this direction. This is something that's referred to as acidosis over here. If your pH of your blood gets down around 7, you're gonna become disoriented, very, very tired. Down to 6.9, 6.8, probably gonna go into a coma. Get a little lower than that, you're gonna be dead. There's not a lot of room to move. So when you burn a lot of fats, and you're getting your energy from fats, you're producing a lot of acid byproducts. Also, you'll notice in that box over there, you're producing something called acetone, used for nail polish removers. Now you got nail polish remover in your bloodstream. You thought dealing with acids was enough. Imagine having nail polish remover in your bloodstream. Your kidneys have to get rid of it. It puts a lot of stress on the kidneys. Now, for many people, you can handle it for a while. I mean, fasting, intermittent fasting, or fasting in general, people do it for religious reasons. It's actually good for the body, but nobody's fasting for months at a time. You're not doing that. But there are people who do for months at a time not burn sugars very well, and they burn a lot of fats all the time. And it'd be a diabetic that's not watching their blood sugar levels. A diabetic who's not watching their blood sugar levels, not taking their insulin properly, or just ignoring things completely. You're not burning sugar because you don't have the insulin to get it into the cell. So what do you burn? Your second favorite source of energy, fats, and you're burning it a lot. So those of you that are going into healthcare fields where you may be dealing with paramedic work, or you're going to be working in an ER as a nurse or a physician's assistant or a medical doctor, you will see patients brought in by the rigs. Many times they're going to be in a state of what we call a diabetic ketoacidosis. They're producing a lot of ketone bodies, which are the acids. They're driving their blood pH in this direction, and they come in out of it. And you've seen them, they're kind of out of it when they come in. And it's because they're acidic. Their blood's becoming acidic. They're not burning the sugars and such. So there's a drawback. Yeah, again, for the average person, you said, gee, my sister asked me to be the maid of honor or whatever in her wedding. I got to lose a little weight or something for it. I'm going to be the best man in a way. I got to lose a little weight. So I'll diet a little bit. Your body will start to burn some fats. It's not going to be a problem because it's not your permanent, metabolism that you're dealing with. So there's a drawback. But fats are a good source of energy, as you can see here, and that's how we take care of it. The glycerol produces 36 to 38 ATPs, and the fatty acids, depending on the length, this one was 18, but if they're 14, you get 7 acetyl-CoAs. If it's going to be 16, you get 8. If it's short-chain fatty acids, you get less, but we can get a lot of energy out of it. That's all I'm saying. We get a lot of energy out of it. Now, the other one is that's lipid catabolism. Is there lipid anabolism? Oh yeah, we live in the United States. There's definitely lipid anabolism. We call it lipogenesis. Lipogenesis is creating fats or synthesizing fats from excess carbs and proteins. That's the United States. I mean, I'm sure if you take a trip to either Sam's Club or BJ's or Costco or one of them this week, I mean, people are buying, you ever see them? I don't know if you've ever been to those places. I mean, they got potato chip bags that are like, they look like a big bag of rice that you would have shipped in on a cargo ship, but it's potato chips. I mean, everybody's getting all this great, it's all, if you go to any Super Bowl parties, there won't be any health foods there. People that are serving health foods, nobody's going to their Super Bowl party. So if they got carrot sticks and celery, nobody's gonna be there, it's just them watching it. Again, we eat a lot of refined carbohydrates, we put a lot of calories into the body constantly, and so we can make fats. Lipogenesis, fat creation, like Genesis from the Bible, the making or the creating of, is either the synthesis of or the formation of fats from excess carbs and proteins. That's what we're basically doing in that case. So again, fats are important. We do need them in the diet. We couldn't survive. We need them, as I said, for the nervous system to work properly. We need cholesterol. It's in all of the membranes and everything. For the ladies here, the estrogens and progesterone that your body produces are cholesterol-based. For the gentleman, the testosterone you make is a cholesterol-based molecule. We do need it in the body. We have to have it. Fats are important. Again, but balanced diet. Grandma was right. She didn't go to college, but Grandma knew, eat a balanced meal. Eat a balanced meal, and if you can eat as much non-processed food as possible, you're better off. The better off you'll be. So that's what's going on from the point of view of fats. And the last one is the fate of proteins. What do we do with the protein? Well, proteins, you know, the building blocks of proteins are amino acids. You've absorbed amino acids into the bloodstream. They travel around to the cells of the body. And when they get to the cells, we like to build things with it. We prefer to build things with it. So we're kind of going from here. Carbs are over here. They're like, burn me for energy. I'm over here. I want to burn for energy. The guy in the middle is, you need energy. I can give you energy. I can just lay around, there'll be fat on your body, or I can build things. And the proteins like to come over here and they say, I want to build things in the body. I want to convert whatever those proteins are into human proteins are on the body. So we like to do it. Now, we do burn a little bit of protein each day. There's a small amount that's burned each day. Matter of fact, on the review sheets, since I'm helping you out here, on these review sheets, I forget what number it is, number 26, it says, does protein catabolism occur daily? And the answer is, yes, it does, in very small amounts, but if it's a true and false question, your answer is true, it does occur. Problem with it, though. When you burn a protein, it's up on the board right now. When we burn a protein, we're basically burning amino acids. We're catabolizing amino acids. All of these guys in the light tan boxes, those are amino acids. You know, phenylalanine, tyrosine, leucine, lysine, tryptophan, aspartic acid. You know, all of these are different amino acids. You can see we can convert some into pyruvic acid, make some acetyl-CoA. We can pop some right into the Krebs cycle. You can have some over here that get converted into acetyl-CoA, and finally into acetyl-CoA. They're getting popped in different areas. The big thing is when you burn one of these, you're really not going to get any more than 36 to 38 ATPs. The very most that you could make would be 36 to 38 ATPs. In some cases, you're going to make less than that. So you're not getting a hell of a lot of energy out of a protein. When you burn a protein, you're also producing ketone bodies. You're getting acetoacetic acid, beta-hydroxybutyric acid, and acetone, but you're getting something else which is even worse than those. If you think nail polish remover in the bloodstream is bad, which it is, you're gonna get something worse. When we burn a protein, when you take a protein and you catabolize it, you're gonna put it through a catabolic type of reaction. One of the things you're gonna get off over here is nitrogenous waste. You release off nitrogenous waste, and we get rid of it, it's converted in our body into ammonia. So if you think that acetone, nail polish remover, is bad in the body, imagine having ammonia in your bloodstream. You know, you probably have a bottle at home under the kitchen or bathroom counter area, way in the back with the skull and crossbones on ammonia. It puts a lot more stress on the kidneys. The kidneys get stressed. So people, they don't think about it. I mean, you get a lot of, it's not the ladies. You ladies have common sense. It's the musclehead guys, you know, at the gym there. You know, first off, they're lifting massive amounts of weights that no normal human being needs to lift. I mean, that's ridiculous. And then the other thing is they're taking in massive amounts of proteins. And the more protein you take in, the more stress you put on your kidneys because you're producing the ketone bodies and nitrogenous waste. It's kind of interesting. I don't know. It's like I said, male mentality. I don't know. I see this stuff on the web. It's like, who needs to lift, 600 pounds? I mean, when was the last day? I don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, it's good to be in shape, but I just don't get it. I don't want to insult I have a Navy veteran here. I'm not going to insult, I know you got the Navy SEALs, great group of people there, but I'm always fascinated with the Army Rangers because they look kind of more, the SEALs seem to be bigger guys, most of them, a lot of. The Rangers seem to be like an average sized guy, a lot of flexibility, a lot of stamina, that type of thing. And they go online, you can actually see the training that they do, some of the training that's done. I said, like, if you can take a ladder, like a 20-foot ladder, and put it up on an angle, and then climb it on the underside of it, and then get to the top and come over the top and then come back down the other way, so that's pretty good. If you can carry your own weight, lift your own own weight, I'd say you're pretty darn good. But again, protein, the more protein you take in, so people that eat high protein diets, they gotta be careful. If you're eating high proteins, low fats, low carbs, I had some friends that did some bodybuilding for competition when I was in grad school. You gotta watch it, you don't wanna do it for a long time, it's gonna stress the kidneys quite a bit.
So what happens in the long run with the ketone bodies, with the ammonia? Does the kidney like fully on damages and you end up have to get like a?
Yeah, it can. I mean, it's actually nephrotoxic, what we term ammonia. It's nephrotoxic, it damages the kidneys. You know, people try to watch things a little bit better. Now, the old bodybuilders, a lot of the old bodybuilders have kidney problems. Their kidneys don't work very well. It just was too high. Grandma, like I said, your grandmother was right. Everything in moderation. You know, eat in moderation, protein, yeah, go ahead, have a nice big, look, you wanna treat yourself and be a man versus food and have a 72-ounce, tomahawk chop, stick, go ahead, once a year. It cost you probably $200. But we don't need that much protein. A normal size serving of an animal product will get you all the protein that you need each day. We like to build things with proteins. Collagen, elastic reticular fibers in the skin, they're protein in nature. Your hair and nails are made out of protein-based materials. We have the antibodies, immunoglobulins are protein substances. We use proteins to make some hormones, like tyrosine is used to make, in the making of thyroid hormones. We use it for making thyroids. Obviously, muscle on the body is protein. That's where most of the muscle is on our body. We have proteins that are part of our blood clotting mechanism. We have proteins in red blood cells. Hemoglobin is the globin portion is protein. All of those enzymes that we talked about, like pepsin and lipase and amylase and peptidases and maltase and sucrase and like it, they're all protein-based enzymes. So we use proteins quite a bit, but we like to build things with proteins. But do we burn protein daily? Do we catabolize small amounts? Yes, so small amounts are catabolized daily. What we do with it is we make things. We build things. Back in chapter 3, I know I touched on it briefly with my students, we didn't stress it, but if you go back to chapter 3, there's a section that deals with transcription and translation, and it discusses how we can take DNA and we use it, we make a template that tells us how to put the right amino acids in the right order in order to make the proper proteins in our body. So we like to do that. So burning it for energy, yeah, but you're not gonna get a lot. You may get at the most, at the absolute most, 36 to 38 ATPs, but you gotta deal with all of the byproducts that we have with it. I don't have a lot of questions, as I said on here. There's one other question dealing with metabolism. It's in question number 31. It says, know the 3 sources of energy in the body. Well, we went over them. Glucose is our primary source of energy. Then fat or lipids would be the secondary source of energy. And then the third source would be, if necessary, would be proteins, if we need to. When you see pictures of people around the world in areas where there's a famine, their body, there's no carbs, there's no food. They burn through the fat. You see a picture like a poor little child, they look like skin just stretched over the bone. And then people say, but yeah, they've got a big belly. Look at their belly, how small. What's happened is their body's burning proteins for energy, just to keep the heart running and the brain running. And they burn things like albumin, which is a plasma protein. It's the most 54% of our proteins are albumin in the bloodstream. They burn that for energy, but once you take the albumin and burn it, albumin works like a sponge. It keeps water in the blood. What you're seeing with the swollen belly is something that we call ascites. It's liquid that's leaking out of the blood vessels and pooling in the peritoneal cavity. So that's what's happening on it. And then by the time the teams get in, rescue teams to bring food and stuff in, a lot of times they can't eat it by that point. The kidneys have been so damaged that they won't survive at that point because high protein's being burned. So again, we want to eat a balanced diet. So if you go home, they get nothing out of this. It's just a broad it's a great chapter. It's actually my favorite chapter in the book for myself. If you have a chemistry background, if you studied it, you have a little bit, it's great to read. But the whole thing is, when we eat a meal that you're gonna eat tonight, as you're eating it and you think about what's on your plate, the proteins are gonna be used to build things in your body, hopefully. We burn a little bit, but we're gonna build things. The fats are the middle guys. Build things, store them, energy over here. And if you're eating any carb, you had your rice or you had a baked potato or something, energy over here. We're going to use it for energy. That's all I'm saying. I just wanted to give a little overview. The last page of this deals with minerals and vitamins. They are important to our body. When we think of minerals, and I don't have any questions at all on the test. It's not on a review sheet. So there's nothing on the test. But minerals are inorganic elements that help us, regulate certain body processes. you wanna think of a mineral, think of going into a mine with a pickaxe, M-I-N-E, you're going in there, you know, anything on that level, sodium, potassium, iodine, chlorine, magnesium, manganese, cobalt, nickel, iron, that type of stuff. That's what we consider to be a mineral. Some of them in your entire lifetime, you will not even need a teaspoon in your entire, or a tablespoon, I should say, in your entire lifetime. If you do take a multivitamin, take a look on the label, you may see on the back certain things like chromium or something, it'll be in micrograms, it's not even in milligrams, it's in micrograms, we hardly need any at all, but we need it, that's important. Vitamins come from living things, either plants or animals, they come from, and I mentioned that we use them in small amounts to maintain growth and normal metabolism. There are 4 that are fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin A, D, E, and K. We talked about it when we were discussing absorption in the small intestine. Vitamin A, very good antioxidant for the body, picks up free radicals, protects us. Vitamin E is very good for the heart. Vitamin D does a ton of things. It's got about 20-something very important functions in the body, vitamin D. It's an anti-cancer agent. It's a strong immune booster. Obviously, it's involved in absorption of calcium and magnesium. We need vitamin D as part of it, but very important in the body. And then vitamin K, for your younger folks, the bacteria in your large intestine make it. As you get older, you supplement with vitamin K2. It's important for bone density, it's important also for blood clotting, and it's important as an anti-cancer agent, they found out. So that's certainly important to have in your diet. If you do supplement, vitamin D has to be in the form of vitamin D3. I don't even know why they have vitamin D2 out there. I mean, it's useless, but vitamin D3, if someone in the family is older and they're taking vitamin K, there's K1 and K2, you need K2 in order for that to work, function properly. And then vitamin E, I put the word tocopherols next to it. There's different vitamin E's. You usually look for something that's a mixed tocopherol, and you want it sounds weird, the vitamin E, but you want a D form, which is those of you that are taking chemistry, you may remember studying something about mirror images of structures, dextrorotatory and levorotatory structures. You need the D form of it, so it's like a D, like a delta form. So you want the delta form of your vitamin E. The water-soluble vitamins, those are all the B vitamins, and your vitamin C. So I listed them here. Again, there's no questions on any of these, but if you want to read, they're in the book in the back. B1, thymine, B2, riboflavin, there's niacin, there's B6, peroxidine, B12 is cyanocobalamin. That's kind of an interesting one. B12, which we know is very important for the production of which cells in the body? Cells need vitamin B12. Also needs intrinsic factor in the stomach to absorb B12 to make those cells. The parietal cells are making, they make the intrinsic factor to absorb B12. What is the B12 used for? What cells makes B12? Yeah, red blood cells, sure, very good, red blood cells. Yeah, you need to make red blood cells so we don't get pernicious anemia. So you do need it. The cyano, people, sometimes you pick up and say cyano, yeah, it's actually cyanide based on the edge of it, small. There's another form, it's actually called methylcobalamin, which comes in a sublingual form. So if you have any older relatives, you can get methylcobalamin, very cheap, goes under your tongue, it dissolves, and you absorb it through the sublingual blood vessels there. And as people get older, you don't absorb it as well, you don't make as much intrinsic factor. Older men in particular need more vitamin B12, they don't absorb it very well. So that's in that class. Also I mentioned pantothenic acid. Folic acid or folate or folacin, that's the one that's very important when a woman is trying to start a family. You need proper levels of that in your diet in order to have proper brain and spinal cord development. Low levels of folate, it's either, you can call it folacin, folic acid, or folate. If it's very low, you risk having a child born with spina bifida, where the bottom end of the spinal cord actually protrudes out. They have a big lump on their back. They're wheelchair bound. There's no way to repair that. And it's very easy to get. It's, if you have a good doctor, obstetrician, nurse, midwife, when you're trying to plan a family, you start taking some supplements. Once you're pregnant, they'll have all prenatal supplements you'll be taking. Make sure you keep those levels up. And then there's vitamin C, of course, ascorbic acid. That's like the human life couldn't survive without it. We need it. We don't take enough of it in. It's water soluble. It flushes out very easily. Unlike your little dog or cat, you say, oh, look at all the, they make their own vitamin C. Animals make vitamin C, so when you can't find your cat for a while and you're like, she's not feeling well, you're looking, she's way under the bed there for a day or two, you're building up vitamin C in her body. The dog, the same thing. Dogs are smart, cats are smart, we're stupid. We still have to go to work. You still come to school when we're not feeling well. They go into a corner, just disappear for 2 days, and the next thing you know, they come out, they're all right. You go, what the heck happened over here?
Is spina bifida when it doesn't like finish forming, or it doesn't close?
It doesn't form properly, and that's part of it, but not non-closure. You can also have it on the other end, which is really bad. Then you have a child is born, but there's no brain development. So his pictures are weird. You'll see a child kind of looks normal from the front when you look from the side. The back of the head's kind of flat. Back there, the brain didn't develop. And it's just a B vitamin. It's a water-soluble B vitamin. Those are all just water-soluble. Anybody, I don't know if you take any multiple vitamins or anything, you know, sometimes you urinate and your urine's like a bright yellowish color. That's just the excess B vitamins flushing out. We get rid of them. Vitamin C flushes out. Vitamin C is interesting. If you talk to people, medical doctors say, well, you can only take a certain level of it. The body can't absorb it all. Well, normally you can only take a certain level of it, but when you're sick, your body will be able to absorb a lot more than you normally can. And vitamin C levels, they're pretty low. What they recommended daily allowances are very, very low. Probably the average person should be taking about 4,000 milligrams or 4 grams a day minimally. The guy who did the major research on it was Linus Pauling. Dr. Linus Pauling, the guy was a genius, a Nobel Prize winner. He was in his he lived into his late 90s or so, but he was taking, on average, he took about 12 grams a day, 12,000 milligrams per day was the normal number. He worked his way up to that. If you take a lot at one time, you'll get diarrhea, honestly, but you work your way up to it. Linus Pauling was interesting. There was a fellow who went to one of Linus Pauling's lectures, and Dr. Pauling was explaining all his research on this, and when they left, they asked this other doctor that was leaving, he said, what do you think about Dr. Pauling's lecture? How do you enjoy it? And he goes, I didn't understand anything the guy was talking about, and the guy that they asked was Albert Einstein. I mean, different field. He was a physicist. This guy was dealing with biochemistry, Linus Pauling. So, smart man, very smart man. Your Faith, you had another question?
Is there an amount of like vitamin D that, so your body will flush it out, but is there a level that'll give you toxicity?
Vitamin D?
Yeah, D3.
D3, you'd have to go pretty high. I would say that you're talking, I don't know what you're talking about taking per day.
I take like 10,000 per day.
Yeah, no, it probably wouldn't during the winter months. It wouldn't bother them. In the summer, you're already going to make it with some sunshine on your body. You'll make it there. I take 5, sometimes 8,000 IU's per day. Yeah, if you were start taking 50,000 a day, then you better be under doctor's supervision.
Yeah,
I know. I had a professor upstairs. He had very, very low vitamin D blood levels when they measured the 25 hydroxy levels. They were very low, and for about maybe 20 days, she was on very, very high levels.
Yeah.
They did studies out of Canada 20 years ago during flu season with seasonal flu, and they had people that had developed seasonal flu, and they would give them 100,000 IU's for a couple of days, for 2 days, and the flu was gone. The flu was gone. You get the seasonal flu. We're going to see a movie next week in all the classes. I'm going to show dealing with vitamin supplementation for treating and reversing diseases. The guy talks about he had the flu, and he says he was taking 30,000 milligrams of vitamin C per hour. In a powdered form per hour. You just bathe yourself in it, and things can't survive. Vitamin C is kind of interesting. Vitamin C actually looks a little bit like glucose, and that's why they're trying to use forward-thinking doctors rather than dealing with chemotherapies that actually damage the body. Chemotherapy for the treatment of cancers and stuff, it will reduce the cancer, the size of it, and you will get an effect, but you're also actually damaging the body. It's unfortunate they don't tell you, not all, I'm not going to say all, because some of you may have family members. Most of the time you'll treat the cancer, but somewhere later another cancer comes along that you get because you've damaged the body. Vitamin C is interesting. Vitamin C looks like a little bit like glucose. And what happens, if you know anything about cancer cells feed on glucose. They feed on sugar. That's why when they created the food pyramid, we saw cancers go up in the United States, so much carbs that we're eating. So if you can reduce the carb intake and increase, they do intravenous administration of vitamin C. They'll do like 100,000 milligrams of vitamin C. You introduce it, the cancer cells see it, they grab it, they think it's sugar, they pull it in, and when they pull in the vitamin C, they actually produce, as a side effect, they produce hydrogen peroxide in the cells. And you know what hydrogen peroxide will do? It'll actually destroy the cell, the cancer cell. But the human cells from anatomy 1, one of those organelles you forgot, called the peroxisome, we have peroxisomes in our normal cells that get rid of hydrogen peroxide into water and oxygen. So that vitamin C doesn't affect the cell, the healthy cells, it'll destroy the abnormal cells. So they're trying things like this. It's kind of interesting, all of the nutritional aspects. But once again, there's no questions dealing with the vitamins and minerals. The only questions are right on the review sheet. I went over them, I'll do it again. 26, does protein catabolism occur daily? Yes, true. Not a lot, but it does. So that answer is true. Know the 4 stages of glucose catabolism? We said glycolysis, right? Formation of acetyl coenzyme A, the Krebs cycle, and then the last one, electron transport chain. They're listed on the first page, 1 through 4. Question 28 wants to know what the formula for glucose is and its reactants. Right there, it's at the bottom of page 1. Glucose plus 6 oxygen, 6 carbon dioxide, 6 water, 36 to 38 ATP. These are the end products, these are the reactants. So a question might ask you, which of the following is not an end product of glucose catabolism? And it may say water, water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and ATP, and you'd say oxygen, that's not an end product, that's a reactant. You pick whatever letter that is, something on a level like that. The definition of glycolysis, it's the breakdown of 1 glucose into 2 pyruvic acids. The definition of gluconeogenesis, I don't know how I worded it, but either the formation or the synthesis of glucose from fats and carbs or lipids and carbs. Know the 3 different sources of energy: carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins in that order. And then lastly, what metabolism is. Metabolism is the sum of all the chemical reactions in the body. So there's not a lot of questions on it. Again, it's an interesting chapter, but if you don't get anything, you said, what the heck was he talking about? I was totally lost. And then he mentioned a test on the 20th, and your mind's something. Like he said, all I want you to know is when you eat a meal, if you're eating a balanced meal and you're not overeating, your carbs are going to be for energy, your fats are going to be energy, we can build things, we can store them, and the proteins will be over here. We like to build things out of it. That's all I want you to know in the long run. Yes?
For gluconeogenesis, on your paper it says formation of glucose from proteins and fats. Is it proteins or carbs?
Proteins and fats. Yeah, you're making glucose from proteins and carbs. Did I say
Carbs, yeah.
Yeah, it already is a carb. Yeah, proteins and fats become it. Yeah, we take the proteins and fats and we can make some carbs. We don't make a lot, but we can make it. Keep the brain running. Okay. Yeah, I say things. What do I know? All right, so that's chapter whatever. What is it? 25. All right. So that's chapter 25. Let's go into chapter 26 a little bit. I'll do some introductory stuff here. Chapter 26 deals with the urinary system. It kind of follows suit. 24 dealt with putting the food, getting the nutrients out of the food, putting them into the bloodstream. Now 25, they're in the cell. What do we do with them once they're in the cell? And then 26 now deals with what do we do with the byproducts after we're all done with it. You already saw that if you burn fats, you're getting acetoacetic acid, beta-hydroxybutyric acid, ketones. When we burn a little bit of protein each day, we get some ammonia. We have to get rid of this stuff, and that's what the urinary system is going to deal with. So let's take a look at chapter 26. We'll be dealing with this a little bit today, and then we'll talk more about this on Thursday and then next Tuesday. Obviously, with the urinary system, we're going to be focusing a lot on the 2 kidneys as we go through this. We're going to have to talk about the 2 kidneys, most of it, and then we will spend a short amount of time on the 2 ureters, the urinary bladder, and then the urethra. So those are the basic parts. We have 2 kidneys, and we'll spend most of the time talking on it. And then we'll talk about the 2 ureters. Those are the tubes that carry the urine from the kidneys down to the bladder. We'll spend all of about 5 minutes on the ureters, the urinary bladder, where we store the urine, and the urethra is the tube that lets the urine go to the exterior of the body. But before we get to that, I want to talk about some functions, because there's actually 8 functions to the urinary system. One of the functions of the urinary system is that it regulates the ionic composition of the blood. It regulates the ionic composition of the blood. What the kidneys are actually doing, in a sense, is kidneys, for those of you that maybe own a pool, an above ground or in-ground pool, they work like a pool filter. It's filtering the blood 24 hours a day. The blood goes through the kidneys about 60 times per day. If you could jump onto a red blood cell and shrink yourself and ride around on the bloodstream, you'd go through the kidneys 60 times per day. And so we're filtering the blood, and one of the things it will do, it regulates the ionic composition of the blood. So this weekend, while you're either working somewhere, feeding people that are watching the Super Bowl, or at a party yourself, you'll be eating a lot of salts and things certainly in the food, and so sodium levels will be really out of whack, and potassium levels will be out of whack, and we're able to filter it, and we'll get rid of the excesses. So sodium, potassium, chlorine, calcium, things of that nature, we can regulate that through the kidneys, and we can get rid of it. So we'll regulate the ionic composition of the blood. That's one of the functions of it. The kidneys, or the urinary system, will also regulate the blood's pH. Mentioned earlier, Vanessa mentioned when I asked, I said, gee, what's the blood's pH normally? We said blood is 7.35 to 7.45, the blood in the body, pH in the blood. And that's correct, but the pH of urine, when we talk about urine pH, it's much different. Blood pH is 7.35 to 7.45. Urine's pH is about 4.5 to 8, much wider. We can use the blood to use the urine, to correct for blood problems. So, for a healthy person that's dieting a little bit, and you're producing those ketone bodies and shifting your blood's pH a little bit, you'll dump out a more acidic urine. Maybe you'll have a pH of 5 or 4.5. If you're running on the alkaline side, it'll get rid of the excess alkali, so that we got to keep the blood's pH, again, the blood we need to keep in that very, very narrow range. Again, compared to blood needs to be about 7.35 to 7.45, and it can vary, but as it starts to move out of those ranges, we'll get rid of the excess acids or alkali. So that's another function of it. The system also is going to regulate the blood volume. It regulates the volume of the blood. I see many of you as I'm looking around the room. I see bottles of water. I see drinks, coffee, teas, and stuff. I got some water. If you drank a lot of water while you were in class here today, two or three bottles of water, before you know it, you're going to go to the bathroom and you're going to have a larger volume of urine. You're going to get rid of that excess water out of your body. You've added so much to it. You got to remember, the cardiovascular system is a closed system. It's a closed system of pipes, in a sense, and as you put more in it, it drives the pressure up inside of there. So we get rid of the excess water. We got to get that water out of there. So you'll urinate, again, drink, you got Josh has the bottle of Poland spring water. You drink 4 of those bottles by noon today, you're going to go urinate a lot later on. You drink the Gatorades or anything else, a couple of cups of coffee or tea, you're going to urinate more. So we can regulate the blood's volume, because we can only have so much water inside the system, or liquid in there. And this in turn is directly connected to the next one. By regulating the blood volume, we regulate the blood pressure. You regulate your blood pressure. It's a closed system. As the blood volume goes up, what happens to the blood pressure? Goes up too, yeah. Blood volume goes up, blood pressure goes up. Blood volume drops, blood pressure drops. You're working the ER, someone comes in with an injury where they're bleeding out somewhere, their blood pressure's dropping fast because they're losing blood out and the liquid's coming out. So we want to maintain it so that regulating the blood volume will affect the blood pressure. Maybe some of your parents, grandparents, somebody in the family, if a doctor is treating them for high blood pressure, quite often early on, they'll treat them rather conservatively, and they'll just give them a mild diuretic to try to see if there's any excess water in the body. We get out a little bit of water, maybe just drop the blood pressure enough where we want it to be. And then there's a last one. This is kind of just an odd one. It's what we term regulating blood osmolarity. Regulating blood osmolarity, what this actually is is that you're regulating the ionic composition and the volume simultaneously. That's what we're really doing. It's number 1 and number 3 at the same time. So we can regulate the ionic composition of the blood, number 1, and the volume at the same time. We can do that. If you're very, very high in salt, what'll happen is as you're dumping the salt, you'll pull water with it. Water loves to follow salt, so we're doing it simultaneously. So these are some functions of it, but there's still a couple of other functions of this. The urinary system, those you kind of picture urinary system. The urinary system actually is partially endocrine. It secretes hormones. I mean, when we talk about the pituitary gland, we think endocrine. We think about the thyroid gland. We say, okay, endocrine, adrenal glands, especially the kidney. You wouldn't think kidney endocrine. What could be endocrine? But it does secrete hormones. It actually secretes 2 hormones, the urinary system. The kidneys will secrete something called erythropoietin. It's a hormone, erythropoietin, that the kidneys secrete. The name erythropoietin sounds a little bit like the old name of a specific kind of cell. Yeah, the red blood cells, right, erythrocytes. Yeah, it sounds like an erythrocyte. The kidneys are small. They're not big structures. We'll talk about it in just a moment. Take one of the petite ladies in the room here. Your kidneys may be 4 inches high, 2 inches wide, and an inch thick. Take a taller gentleman, maybe he's 3 by 5 by 1. They're not very, very big, but they're very vascular. Each kidney has about 1.2 liters of blood going through it per minute. So you know what a liter bottle looks like. So take a liter and a quarter bottle, and each kidney per minute goes through it. They're the most highly vascular organs in the body. And so if the oxygen level shifts, something called hypoxia, if they detect that there's low oxygen in the blood, what they will do is they will dump out erythropoietin. And it goes to the red bone marrow, and it causes your red bone marrow to dump out erythrocytes, red blood cells. And what do red blood cells carry? Oxygen. Brings your oxygen levels up here. This is something that they were playing with back when I was younger, back in the 1970s or so. The Eastern Bloc countries during the Olympics, they were treating their athletes with this. They were calling it renal erythropoietic factor, and trying to put more blood cells in them to carry more oxygen so that they could be more stamina in events. It was also causing strokes in young athletes because your blood gets too thick. So that was way, way back before you were born. Back in the 70s, you'd have East Germany and Russia and Czechoslovakia, when they were all Eastern Bloc countries. They were always something going on in sports back then. The other thing is that the kidneys will also release out something called calcitriol. It will release out calcitriol. You know it by a much different name. Calcitriol it sounds like calcium. Calcitriol is actually the activated form of vitamin D. It's vitamin D. It's an activated vitamin D. We know from Anatomy 1 that getting sun on your skin is what actually starts the process. That starts the process of making vitamin D. That doesn't end the process. It starts in your skin, then we send components of those precursors to the liver, which do more, then the liver shoots it out and ends up in the kidneys, and we end up with the final product. We end up with this, which is activated vitamin D, fully activated, fully functioning. So from now on, when you hear somebody talk about vitamin D, it's not actually a vitamin. It's a hormone. It's a pro-hormone vitamin D. It has a hormonal effect on the body. So it's really not a vitamin in the sense of a vitamin. It's more than that. So 2 more and then we'll get you out of here. Okay, for those who don't have lab with me. Kidneys are also involved with gluconeogenesis. They're involved with this process of gluconeogenesis. The kidneys have the ability to take glutamine, and glutamine is an amino acid, and they can convert it into glucose. Gluconeogenesis, forming glucose from either fats or proteins. So we can take a protein, an amino acid, and then the last thing is that it will removes toxins, the removal of toxins. So we talked about acetoacetic acid, beta hydroxybutyric acid, we talked about acetone being produced, ammonia being produced. We'll remove toxins, the removal of drugs. Drugs get removed also this way. Those of you that work in healthcare facilities, you know, when you first went there, you have to go give them a little urine sample, and you're gonna be fingerprinted and background checks and all of those things they'll do, so they'll check for that. It'll also remove hormones. Hormones come out in the urine. That's how they do a pregnancy test kit. You take a pregnant test of urine. You can get a ovulation test kit. You test the urine so you can pick up hormones in there and such. If people are using any sort of hormones, growth hormones and stuff in athletics, then when they check them for performance-enhancing drugs and things of that nature, they pick it up in the urine. The tests are quite sensitive now, just to be aware of. I know that we're all done with those. I know it's legal now in the state of New Jersey, you know, you can toke on a joint and stuff. I don't know how much the hospital's gonna like if you give them a urine sample and you find stuff in there. If they're gonna really wanna hire you per se to work around it.